Hey there, welcome back to my kitchen. In today's video, we're going to be making some pantry style 9x13 recipes. Even though I made these recipes trying to use up things from my pantry before our move, these recipes all turned out being very good, so I do hope that you enjoy and maybe get some inspiration out of this video. But let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you how I made them. First up today, we're going to make a bacon wrapped pork tenderloin with some carrots and potatoes. You will need to preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And then to begin, I'm just taking 3 large carrots and I'm going to cut the ends off and peel them. My husband does not like carrots, so I'm only using 3, but you can absolutely use more than this. Once they are peeled, I'm going to go ahead and chop them up into smaller pieces along with 1 bag of baby red potatoes, just slicing those as even as I can. I went ahead and washed those and then added them into a 9x13 casserole dish. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil on them and mix them up really well. To season up these carrots and potatoes, I'm going to be adding about 1 to 2 teaspoons of my favorite all-purpose seasoning. And then giving that a good mix to make sure the seasoning is covering all the potatoes and carrots. Go ahead and stick these in your oven and let these bake for about 20 minutes to start. While those are in the oven, we're going to go ahead and get our seasoning mixture for the pork tenderloin ready. Into this little bowl, I'm adding half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Get that mixed up and then set it aside for right now. On the parchment paper, I'm going to be taking almost 1 entire package of bacon. You're just going to lay these down, slightly overlapping them on the edges until they are about the same length as your pork tenderloin. Now, just looking at my pork tenderloin, I knew that I was not going to need quite this much bacon, so I did go ahead and take some scissors and just kind of cut off about 1/3 of the bacon. If yours is a fatter pork tenderloin, then you will probably need the entire slice, but mine was not very big. I laid my pork tenderloin down on the bacon and then just sprinkled the seasoning mixture on all sides of the pork tenderloin. This way, the bacon will catch any seasoning that falls off of your pork tenderloin. Now, using the parchment paper, I'm just going to use that to help me roll this pork tenderloin up in the bacon. Once you have that all rolled up, go ahead and turn the seam side over so that you can take some toothpicks and just kind of secure the edges. This is optional, but if you don't do this, there's a good chance your bacon will fall off or come loose. About this time, your potatoes and carrots should be coming out of the oven, and you just want to make sure that they are getting to the point where they will be fork tender. If the fork is not going through at all, you'll want to stick these back in the oven for about another 10 minutes. But if the fork is able to pierce them, then you can go ahead and add the pork tenderloin. I just took my spoon and made some room for the pork tenderloin, and you're just going to add that into the middle, leaving the seam side up. This is going to go back in your oven for about 20 minutes, and then at the end you can turn your broiler on for about 5 minutes to help crisp up the edges of the bacon. Once it came out of the oven, I also did let this rest for about 10 minutes before slicing into it. Here's what my plate looked like in the end. This pork tenderloin was so juicy and had some amazing flavor from the bacon, but I do have to tell you the star of the show was actually the potatoes. Those potatoes absorbed so much flavor from that pork tenderloin and bacon. They were so delicious. Honestly, I wish there would have been more. But I've never actually made something quite like this, so I really enjoyed this dinner and I definitely will be making it again. Next up, we're making a chili and cornbread bake. For this one, you will need to go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Now over here to my cutting board, I am going to go ahead and chop up one small yellow onion, and then you'll take that onion and add it into a big pot with 1 pound of ground beef. Go ahead and just let the two of these cook in here together until the ground beef is cooked all the way through. Once your ground beef is cooked, go ahead and drain off any grease if needed, and now we're going to add in some seasonings. You'll need to add in 2½ teaspoons of chili powder, 1½ teaspoons of cumin, a ½ teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Of course, later on, feel free to adjust any of these seasonings as needed. I'm also going to be adding in 1 heaping tablespoon of minced garlic. Give that a good mix together and let this cook for about another minute or so. Now this is one of those recipes where I was cleaning out my pantry, so I did add in 1 can of Italian stewed tomatoes, but any can of tomatoes will work. I also added in 1 can of green chilies and about 1 cup of frozen corn. I stir that up and let that cook for about 5 minutes just to allow the corn to warm through. Then finally I added 1 can of chili beans along with 1 can of drained and rinsed black beans. Once all of that is mixed together, go ahead and turn off your burner and just let it sit there for a couple minutes while you prepare the cornbread. Into this bowl, I'm going to be preparing 1 box of cornbread. For this recipe, you actually will need 2 boxes, but since I was cleaning out my pantry for our move, I only had 1 box, so I just made the 1 box work. For this, I just went ahead and followed the directions on the box of Jiffy. Pulling out my 9x13 casserole dish, I am just going to go ahead and spray that down with some nonstick spray. Into the bottom, you're going to add your ground beef, tomato, corn, and bean mixture. Spread that out evenly over the bottom, and then you're going to start adding the cornbread. Since I only had 1 box of Jiffy, I did consider just kind of spreading this out across the top, but then ultimately I went ahead and just decided to add it to 1/2 of the casserole because I honestly wasn't sure if my husband would like the cornbread on his half. So I just spread that out over half of the casserole. Like I said, you will need 2 boxes if you are actually going to follow this recipe. But once I had that spread out, I went ahead and added that into the oven for about 20 minutes until the cornbread was nice and golden on top. Here's what my bowl looked like in the end. I did go ahead and add some mild cheddar cheese on top with some sour cream and sliced jalapenos. For this being a pantry meal, this turned out really good, and to my surprise, my husband really enjoyed the cornbread on his, so for me this was definitely a win-win. Next up, this ended up being a really delicious pantry meal as well. We're going to make these chicken and bacon stuffed shells. To begin, I'm just going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 350 degrees. Now over here into this little baking dish, I do have 2 small chicken breasts. I'm going to season these up on both sides with some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. Those went into the oven and they baked for about 15 to 20 minutes until they were cooked all the way through. While the chicken was in the oven, I went ahead and just took the remaining bacon I had in my fridge. This was probably about 1/3 of a pack, and I'm just going to go ahead and cook all this bacon up here in my skillet. And then after this bacon cools down, I'm going to go ahead and chop it up into smaller pieces. I also had about 3/4 of a box of these jumbo shells in my pantry, so I went ahead and just cooked those up following the box directions. Once they were done cooking, I went ahead and drained off all the water and set those aside for just a minute. Next, in this little pan, I'm going to get our sauce ready, so I'm going to go ahead and melt about 1/4 cup of butter. Once the butter is melted, then I'm going to add in 1/4 cup of flour. I'm just going to let this flour cook in here for about a minute or so. And then at that point, I am slowly going to start adding in 1 cup of milk. Once all the milk is in and it is thickened up a little bit, we're going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. As I got this mixed together, it seemed a little bit too thick to me, so I did go ahead and add a little bit more milk in here, just a little bit at a time, until it started to thin out a bit. You're also going to add in 1 package of ranch seasoning in here as well. Once your sauce is all mixed together, go ahead and just let that sit on the side for right now. As you can see, the chicken has come out of the oven, and I did go ahead and shred up that chicken. Into the chicken, I added some frozen spinach. This was about 1/3 of a cup. I also added in 1 cup of shredded mild cheddar cheese, a little bit of green onion, and then about 1/2 cup of the sauce that we just made. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can save the bacon to add to the top, but I went ahead and added just a little bit of bacon into the chicken mixture. Get that all mixed together really well, and then we're going to start adding this into our jumbo shells. You can fill your jumbo shells as much as you want. I like to try to add about 1 to 2 tablespoons of filling inside of each one. As I filled those up, I went ahead and just added them into the bottom of my 9x13 casserole dish. Once all the noodles are in the pan, then you're going to take the rest of your sauce and just add that over top of all the noodles. Like I said, this sauce ended up being very thick, but it was still able to be spread over all of my noodles just fine. When you cover the noodles, you just want to try to make sure you cover the edges as much as possible, that way they don't get hard in the oven. Then over the top, I did sprinkle a little bit more Parmesan cheese, but you could also add some mozzarella on here as well. And then I lightly dusted the top with a little bit of breadcrumbs. I stuck this in my oven for right around 20 to 25 minutes until the noodles were warmed all the way through and the cheese was melted over the top. Now you can go ahead and add the rest of your bacon and green onions, and then this meal is ready to go. Here's what my plate ended up looking like in the end, and even though this was a pantry meal, I did follow a recipe for some inspiration. and I had most of the ingredients, but this recipe ended up turning out so good. The sauce was a little thicker than I wanted it to be, but it still was super flavorful and fantastic on these noodles. Also, I made some steamed broccoli on the side there and was dipping my broccoli in the remaining sauce, and that was great as well. Usually when I make stuffed shells, it's my normal recipe that my husband loves, but this one was different and we both really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you found some good recipes in this video, or maybe just some inspiration. If you did make it all the way to the end of today's video, don't forget to leave me a flower down below in the comments to let me know that you did. And I will be seeing you back here on Sunday for a new video. Bye!